Correct, I guess.
One donation so far. RIP. Maybe we'll do better today. Well, it's convention week, people can get notifications. Be sure to include the donation link in that message too.
Can you
PayPal.me/socialistRA.
paypal.me/socialistRA?
Yep.
Is it www or just?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
How's everyone doing this morning? Everyone, everyone full of energy, vim, and vigor? I hope so. I mean, I might be.
Who's gonna be at the other end?
You.
Oh. Okay.
So we're going to give it 15 more minutes for any late people to show up, and after that, that's on them. We'll get started in a few minutes. Sorry for the slow morning, but I think everybody's a bit out of it.
Partying all night will do that to you.
Yeah. By the way, all audio is coming through the stream right now. All mics are coming through the stream right now.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red shore, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slaves will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with people's injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red shore, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slaves will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red shore, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slaves will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with people.
And close the door.
Gotta get my fucking property rights in video.
We have 11 viewers so far, so that's nice. Maybe some more folks will tune in. Probably. Oh, go ahead and do that link out, JL. Wish we could have the same link every day, but.
Alright, I can't reckon we can approve the S&P 5000 until I submit those changes.
Yeah.
Because those are ready.
Probably. I also include the PayPal link in the email. Mic check. Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Check, check.
Neat. All right, we're all up here. Day 2, convention. All right. How many people are new? Do we have anyone that just showed up? You two showed up a little bit late. You and yeah. Okay. We'll go over this quicker, but not as quickly. So, yes, this is the Socialist Rifle Association 2019 convention. If this is not where you intend to be, then I'm not sure where you would be, but also there's, yeah, you probably should, yeah. We'll go over the itinerary for today to kick things off with. We're starting at 9:30, kind of cut into that kickoff time because honestly it's not going to take us a full hour. Hopefully some more people show up throughout the day. So we'll get the policies and itinerary reviewed like we're doing right now, and then go into officer reports. That'll fill up the rest of the time until lunch at 12. Lunch will be 2 hours. We'll have food out in the hall like yesterday, and feel free to mingle as appropriate. From 2 till 3:30, we have chapter petitions. So to clarify, this is if your chapter is petitioning for a chapter delegate, or your chapter is invoking Section 5 of Article 9. So Article 9 is a chapter's article. Section 5 is chapter petition. So that is for petitions that are going under that section. That is not for individual member petitions. That is something that your chapter has, as a chapter, elected to petition. So that is the clarification on that. Your petitions, I know we've had some confusion on that. If you have it in a digital form, send it to the secretary at socialistra.org email. We will, prior to the officer reports, we'll hold a emergency meeting of the Central Committee to ratify some chapters that need ratified before they can petition, and also to clarify our opinion on how we're going to accept those names. We understand that it's a last minute thing for a lot of folks, and we'll try to be accommodating as reasonable. We just have to, if you can provide us information in some form to verify that you have at least 10 members in your chapter, and we can verify that they are members and your chapter has approved its representation as a delegate, or to send a delegate for representation, then we'll take it. This has to be done today, before 3:30. Then 3:30 to 5:30 is member petitions, so that will be individual member petitions that members are presenting to try to go to referendum. From 5:30 till 7 will be petition discussion and vote. We'll discuss the petitions presented and then vote on them to see if we're going to go to referendum or not. We'll break at 7 o'clock. And then Sunday, it'll be pretty similar. We'll start check-in at 8 o'clock. We'll start it off at 9. Hopefully people can be here. And then from 9 to 10:30, we'll have the declaration of election candidacy. So if you are intending to stand as a candidate in October, then that is a time for you to get up and give your stump speech. 10:30 to 12 will be committee Q&A. You'll be able to ask us questions about the org, ourselves, whatever on your mind. 12:30 or 12 to 1:30 will be lunch. Then 1:30 to 4 will be member speeches. So anyone who's got things on their mind will have an opportunity to get them off their mind. Then we'll have about an hour block from 4 to 5 for a reflection on the convention and discussing the 2020 convention. And then 5 o'clock we will get this place torn down and get out here. Go over the policies again. Just surmising. Being a good comrade. Don't be nasty to other people, please. Be good to one another. Don't harass one another. Don't use slurs. Definitely don't make non-consensual contact of any sort. Don't yell at people. If you have a firearm with you, concealed means concealed. Be aware of the firearm laws currently in effect in Colorado and the city of Denver. Don't have alcohol or other recreational substances in here, and be respectful when you're out on the floor talking of other people's time and the fact that other people might want to be talking as well. Also, don't take pictures of folks that have not consented to have their pictures taken. That's pretty much it. Any questions about how things are going to proceed today before we get into the thick of it?
Just as a comment with regards to consent and of being photographed or videotaped, I went over this again, but I'll reiterate. If you come up stage, that is, there's a camera pointing and we're live streaming, so that is tantamount to consent.
All right. Motion to hold an emergency meeting of the Central Committee. Second. All right. Start taking minutes. I'll now take attendance. I, Alex, am here. Faye, are you here?
Present.
Scott, are you here?
Present.
Jay, are you here? Present. Brad, are you here?
Present.
Jordan, are you here?
Present.
We have full attendance. we'll be voting to ratify these chapters who have submitted bylaws to us. First one is Central Ohio. They have submitted their bylaws. Does anyone have any comments about these bylaws? I actually don't think they're on the Slack, but JL wrote them.
Are they Wichita template, more or less?
More or less.
Does it have jurisdiction and everything?
Yes. They're not in the slide.
I didn't think so. Yeah, it's in the email. Yeah.
Alright, it's on the slide.
Feel free to review as appropriate. Let's see. Download this.
Pretty standard.
Okay. I'd hope JL wouldn't put anything in there.
JL's appointed himself. It's inspired by the North Georgia chapter bylaws.
I posted the Michigan and the Milwaukee too. I don't
Okay.
know where the South New England is, but we've already reviewed it a couple times now.
I posted the Southern New England a few days ago in
Okay.
the Central Committee Slack channel, if you scroll up.
All right.
Everything was good.
Do we feel we have sufficient review of the Central Ohio bylaws?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to ratify the Central Ohio bylaws in the chapter. All right. All in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Unanimous. All right, moving on to South New England. We've reviewed this a couple times now, and we were going to approve it last time, and we just didn't have quorum. So, do we want to discuss or go ahead?
I think we've discussed these plenty before.
Okay. Motion to approve the South New England bylaws.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Aye. Unanimous. All right, Michigan bylaws. Michigan has submitted their bylaws. It looks like it's,
Do they have enough signatures? I see one.
well, all of them have one signature, but like, what does it, how many people does it say voted?
Oh, let's find out.
That should be in their ratification. 11 ayes. I think that's sufficient.
Yeah.
They have a ratification clause. They made sure to put the name in, and they have a leadership structure as well as jurisdiction. I say it's good.
There it is. Yep, all right.
All right. Motion to approve the Michigan bylaws.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Milwaukee bylaws. Looks like these are the same as well.
I reviewed these when I was looking into
Oh,
Milwaukee the other day.
yeah, that's right, you did.
They're pretty standard too.
Yeah, that's. Leadership.
This one does not have numbers on it.
They
Blank
do not
eyes,
seem
nays,
to have
with
filled in
blank
their
dots.
ratification is the one thing. I was thinking they were gonna update it or something. If you go down to ratification,
Yeah.
it's still blank.
Yeah. We don't happen to have anyone from Milwaukee here today, do we? I don't think I printed it off Milwaukee badge. No.
I can contact the organizer directly later.
Yeah.
If they get us, if they can send us an updated version by tonight, then we can.
Do it first thing
Yeah.
in the morning.
I don't
In the
think
meeting
they're
tonight.
petitioning for a delegate. Did they tell anything about you about that?
No, they're not.
All right, let's table Milwaukee until tonight.
I'm gonna send a message to their primary organizer, telling them to fill in the ratification section. I'm gonna do that right now.
Okay. All right, we'll handle Milwaukee tonight then. Well, That's it for emergency business.
Oh, sorry, we were also going to
Oh, yes.
officially clarify for chapter petitions.
Oh, yes, officially clarify for chapter petitions. Motion that if a chapter provides 10 verifiable members who have agreed to petition for a chapter delegate, that we will accept that under Article 9, Section 2.
I'd like to add an addendum that we adopt this with the understanding that this will be updated with improved language before the next convention.
Second. Do you get that? Oh no, we need the motion text. Okay, so the form of motion text is motion to accept. Okay, nope, now I have to think how I've said it. Motion to accept a chapter delegate petition if that petition has at least 10 member names who have consented to the petition. Add verifiable member names. So then Faye has the addendum. So that was saying with the understanding that this will be updated before the next convention. And then I seconded that. Okay. Motion to accept that motion. All in favor? Unanimous. Motion to close. Well, nobody's seconding it, but I'm closing it. All right. Officer reports. Next thing on the agenda, we will be following the structure in the bylaws, which is president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, legal coordinator, who's not with us. And then we'll do director of firearm instruction, director of chapter organizing, director of meeting and agitprop, who is handling the stream right now, and then director of graphic design. So that means I get to start. So the point of this is to provide people with kind of an idea of what officers are up to. It does actually specify in the bylaws that we are to provide the membership an update with, annual goings on of the organization and what the officers are doing. So in my role as president over the last year, almost a year now, that I've had the formal title, it's essentially been a lot of administrative work. I handle a bunch of administrative back end for the organization. I do paperwork, I file legal documents, that sort of thing. Some of that has begun to be taken on by Scott as we expand further out. There's a lot more financial documents that we had to start taking care of, and Scott will get to that in his report. I'm also the main point of contact for the organization when it comes to the press. Usually I'm the one reaching out. Me and Faye typically share that responsibility as executive officers. So in the last year, there's a lot of specific little things, but in the broad strokes, we went from October when we officially made the not-for-profit corporation in Kansas. That is when we started that. I was involved in getting all the paperwork taken care of for that. We got the merger taken care of to merge the New Mexico LLC out of existence and into the Kansas not-for-profit to get everything taken care of on that end. Worked on the 501c4 filing. got that taken care of Scott, and then beginning to set up business relationships, getting, our button provider set up. I think reached out to OCD back then as well. And then about November-ish, the committee approved to begin paying me a wage. I currently earn $12 an hour through that for work directly related to my role as president. So I worked full-time for the SRA for 2 months for that, through November, December. We had the big card backlog, and I worked on getting those cards sent out. Got that caught up. Things slowed down in January, kind of slowed down, and I started to resume other regular work. But still continued to do press-related stuff, getting merch shipped out. I also fulfill most of the merch right now. Anything that doesn't come out of the print shop goes through me, and I get that shipped out. Also responsible for supervising the officers per the bylaws, so that essentially amounts to meetings like this. We have meetings every week now where we get caught up on things, and then I also send out Slack messages to people and ask what they're doing and move them along, and then people send me messages and ask what I'm doing and move me along. So works out. Honestly, don't have too much of a recap beyond that of what's been going on. It's just a lot of day-to-day business. We haven't had too much happen. Probably the most significant event recently was our attempt to get membership in the NSSF. They revoked that over the weekend. So I was the one that approved that in the first place, and then we found out later that that was in violation of one of our policies, actually. There was more process that needed to go into that, but we got that pushed through, and then the Monday afterwards sent us a letter from their attorney saying that we were expelled for not being in line with the NSSF's beliefs. So essentially saying that they are through and through a capitalist organization versus a firearms organization was essentially the gist of that letter. It's been posted to the website for people to review. They did refund our dues, so we got our money back from that, for that $200. I did save some of that research information that we went to it for before that, because I was sending that back and forth with our social media director. I'm trying to figure out what the rules are, since our membership has been revoked, how we can use that information. I believe we still can, because that license is granted in a sort of, once you have it sort of way, so long as it's accredited afterwards. I think it'll be all right, but I have to confirm with that. There.
I'm just curious, was it like what was the reason for them to sort of go back on their initial acceptance? Was it like other members of the org bottom up sort of anger, or was it like top down realizing who we actually were?
So the full sequence of events that happened with that was we had discussed joining the NSSF since January. The main advantages we saw is we continue to have trouble getting insurance for the organization. General liability, professional liability, all these insurances, we've had very little success in getting folks to come and insure the organization, mostly because we do the two things that no insurance company wants to do. We're political, which means greater risk of frivolous lawsuits pushed against us, and we do firearms, which means greater risk of somebody getting shot. If we were just doing one of those things, there's plenty of companies out there that specialize in one of those things. Finding a company that specializes in both, we're having trouble with that. The NSSF affiliates with various organizations for various services, one of which is an insurance company that is specifically an NSSF affiliate, gives preference to NSSF members when writing their policies. So we sought that out for insurance purposes. We also saw that they had research information, both on gun sales, hunting information, even stuff like how many FFLs are issued in a year and analysis based on that. So there was a lot of information we felt like we could get out of that. And then we also were considering that with the NSSF membership, that would entitle us to an easier access to things like the SHOT convention and other firearm conventions and shooting clubs and sort of things, shooting competitions. That was something else we looked at, that we could attempt to do some entryism, as it were, into that, and work towards promoting our mission statement of building a more inclusive firearm culture. It's good enough to build our own space, but eventually we're going to run out of leftists in America, and we're going to have to start converting the masses. So that all was taken into consideration. Like I said, we discussed it back in January. We never really got anywhere. It was one of those things that got discussed and then just kind of put on the back burner as other things came up. That was about the time that that article from Incendiary News dropped about the Central Texas wreckers, and we were dealing with that for a while. So it got dropped, and then we were applying to some other insurance companies. We kept having bad luck. So we decided more recent, within the last couple of weeks, we'd go ahead and put that application in. So it was one of those things that was discussed, but unfortunately we did not follow the proper procedure of getting a formal vote on it beforehand. So that's on me, but we went ahead and got that taken care of. I went to the website, paid them. Apparently they were having IT issues at the time. So when I put in the application for the membership, never got an email back or anything. So, and there wasn't even, on their application, they don't even have a form for you to put your credit card number or anything. It's just an application. Waited about a week, gave them a call. It's like, hey, what's happening? Is there something going on? Like, oh yeah, you've been tentatively approved. We just have an issue with the email, so you didn't get an email, so we can take your payment over the phone. So we paid dues, became official members. That account manager, or I forget her actual title, it's in the email somewhere, but there was a manager level person that we spoke to who got our account set up a temporary password. That was Socialist One. So like they were aware of who we were, if they weren't already aware from the name. They even left a voicemail message on my phone when they called me back, discussing the organization. So they were aware of us. Shortly thereafter, we posted it to social media and got, a lot of feedback on it, most of it positive. There were understandable concerns that came up, and I'm more than happy to discuss any of those concerns with members. What I'm not happy to discuss is with folks online who are not members, who every time we do anything accuse us of splitting the party, of being too liberal or whatever. But I definitely understand members who have concerns about when we announced that we were part of the NSSF now. Shortly after that announcement, a forum post on ar15.com was made. You had a lot of very far-right individuals get on that forum post a lot of, just downright disturbing things, veiled death threats, anti-Semitic comments, that, not regular business for neo-Nazis online. They then orchestrated a call campaign, left dozens of voicemails at the NSSF's corporate office about this, sent emails out. There was a scattering of stuff on social media, them atting the NSSF on Twitter and stuff, being like, is this real? All that sort of thing.
Just a note of clarification, I think only a couple of their members actually got to the point of calling in. I think they mostly did a Facebook brigade.
Okay. I know there were call-ins, but
There's at least two that I know of.
yeah, the exact number, who knows? But we know that they were called, that the NSSF had it brought to their attention. It happened over the weekend, and then that Monday morning, I guess everyone got into the office and saw all of the messages, be it online or otherwise, and freaked out. The CEO of the NSSF, I guess, per the attorney letter, instructed the chief attorney of this NSF to send us a letter revoking our membership, saying that, I'll pull it up so we can actually read the reasoning, because I still find it hilarious, but
They are ultimately a free market capitalist organization.
yes. So for clarification, like the NSSF, like all gun organizations basically in America, save for, you know, the few scatterings on the left, and then some more apolitical organizations, are reactionary in nature. It's just something that's difficult to get away from in gun culture. And so I don't believe, at least prior to that letter, I did not believe the NSSF to be a strictly reactionary organization. I know that they had not good politics and had donated money to shit people, but a lot of companies donate a lot of money to shit people. We still use their services to get to where we're going to go. As the saying goes, if they're going to sell you the rope, buy the rope. But they sent us a letter. It was from Stefan Sinati, Chief Executive Officer. So it was actually the Chief Executive Officer who sent this, not the attorney. My apologies. It says, I am writing to inform the Socialist Rifle Association Incorporated that the National Shooting Sports Foundation has terminated your membership in the foundation on the grounds of several positions espoused by your organization constitute conduct detrimental to the best interests of the foundation as provided in our bylaws. Your membership fee of $200 has been refunded to your original form of payment as of July 22nd per the enclosed receipt. The NSSF embraces free market capitalism to allow competition in the marketplace to meet the needs of today's firearms owners, manufacturing firearms for both law-abiding citizens and law enforcement needs, and support for the Second Amendment. The NSSF is aware your organization does not share these same values and in fact advocates for positions against the core values of the NSSF. So, given that the only core value that we would be advocating against, since we do support firearm ownership for law-abiding citizens and other folks as well, and we do support the manufacture of firearms because you can't possess a firearm if it hasn't been manufactured. The only thing in there is law enforcement needs, which, like, we all have our opinions on how law enforcement is going to work after socialist transition of society, be it at all, but nonetheless, we haven't released a statement saying basically anything about cops beyond our bylaws saying don't be a cop. So the only core position that we would be advocating against is free market capitalism, and that is the basis by which that they declined our membership, or revoked our membership, as it were. It wasn't a decline. There was also an email sent, I believe, to Jordan from Mark Olivia, who is the Director of Public Affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
Pretty much the boilerplate, same thing you got.
Yeah, pretty much the boilerplate. It claims we were processed for an automated messaging system, which it was automated in the sense that I went to a website and put in an application, but it was not. Perhaps in an ordinary situation, if that email had worked and, you know, had sent it back and I could have put my card information in, I could buy that would be more automated. But the way it sounded like over the phone, you have to call in to get your account set up and everything. So, like, how much of that's automated and how much of that's a human person, who knows? But definitely in our case, I had a physical conversation with somebody. I gave people credit card information over the phone to somebody who had a manager level position of authority. And again, they gave us the temporary password, Socialist1. They were aware of who we were. They were more than happy to take our money until other people got upset about it, and then they decided that it would be in their best interests to kick us out. So I think at the end of the day, we've come out better for it because it just ended up giving us free publicity. You know, there's definitely a conversation to be had for doing similar things to this in the future, but as far as the outcome of this particular situation, we haven't been served a lawsuit by the NSSF yet. It seems like they're content to just kick us out and, you know, have that little statement on their public media saying they've kicked out the socialists, which only further shows the need for organizations like ours to exist. So I think there's a conversation to be had about how much people can realize the hypocrisy of these things, but for every right-wing post on r/firearms praising them for kicking out the dirty commies, there's posts on r/liberal gun owners, or even within that r/firearms thread where it was going on, where people were like, but wait, I thought we support the Second Amendment, and this is an expression of free speech, which is under the First Amendment. Why are we celebrating this? If they can do that to them, what stops it from doing it to us? And making people start to realize those contradictions and starting to turn on it, I think, will be ultimately positive out of this experience.
One of the comments on the AR-15 thread actually was, could someone explain to me which ideology exactly I need to have in order to retain my gun rights? So even among those who are posting an AR-15 thread, people were realizing that, if you really are advocating for the Second Amendment, maybe don't push out people who just have a different economic preference.
Also, this was a good time for us to basically show that current gun culture in America, I mean, nobody needs to be shown it, but it's just another example to be pushed on the pile that ultimately, we are a socialist organization. We espouse socialist ideology, but we are not a political organization in the same sense of the DSA. We don't go out and support socialist candidates or such for office. We don't, at least not currently. We aren't going out to affect a political change in terms of socialism. We are a single issue organization who happens to base their ideology on leftist thinking as when it comes to firearm ownership and community defense. So basically what they're saying there is that if you are socialist or you are in a marginalized group who, we accept social democrats in this organization. That's as part of, on our website and the bylaws just, the only thing you have to be in order to be a member is to agree with our mission statement that we want to support marginalized groups and workers in general having the right to self and community defense, and doing that through a leftist framework. So I guess my point here is that by showing, the NSSF can claim free market capitalism, but we aren't a threat to free market capitalism. We aren't going out and actively advocating as an organization, abolish the state, abolish capitalism, whatever. That's part of our thing, but that's not where our focus is. That's what guides our single issue belief. And the groups like the DSA or the PSL or the WOBs, they go and do that more directly. We are not a threat to free market capitalism like the NSSF would like to portray. We are not a threat to the market of firearms. We're only a threat to them because we expose the fact that the NSSF, the NRA, the Second Amendment Foundation, these sort of organizations don't actually believe in universal firearm rights. They only believe in the rights of themselves to keep and bear arms, and would prefer other folks don't. That's basically it. I'll stop before I keep going on too long.
I was gonna say, I think James might have stopped me there at some point.
No, that's fine.
I didn't say anything libelous. I just said what's apparent. But yes, when we get served with a lawsuit after they see the stream,
The unlisted stream.
hopefully nobody from the NSSF is on the stream. Though apparently somebody from Armed Equality is a member now, and also Armed Equality just literally, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take this time to besmirch other organizations. I
think we shouldn't really go into it right now.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's that.
Question?
Yes.
No, no, no.
Oh,
That's a
yes.
question there.
I had two questions related to this. The first one is that you mentioned that you had personally pushed it through and that hadn't followed the process that we were supposed to follow apparently. I was wondering if you could elaborate more on that. Like, I mean, I'm not attacking or anything, I'm just trying to know so we can all know what the process is supposed to be.
Yes.
And then two, do we have any kind of legal recourse against them? Because this seems like ideological discrimination and I don't know if that's protected under the law or not.
So,
Do you mind if I address the second part first?
yeah.
So, unfortunately, there is no protection against ideological discrimination in the United States. You know, we have a First Amendment right to espouse what we believe. They have a First Amendment right to espouse what they believe and to kick out people that disagree with what they want to advocate for. Based on what we've been able to read in their bylaws, it's vaguely enough written that they can justify kicking us out, and it's not a violation of their bylaws. So, you know, that's no real legal recourse for us. I'll let Alex do that.
So in the Uniform Policies Handbook that is on the organizers Slack, one of the policies that we passed at the start of the year, I believe, was the expenses policy to help clarify different sorts of expenses that we make day to day, who needs to have authorization for what. So we break it down: administrative expenses, legal expenses, merch expenses, these sort of things, what approval process needs to happen before money can be spent. I had misremembered that policy. I thought that dues payments for organizations was an administrative expense. So for explanation of my thought process, we had previously gained membership in the Kansas Chamber of Service, which is it's like a chamber of commerce for nonprofits. So they provide us certain benefits like advisors and such that we can go to for day-to-day stuff. You know, anything that you wouldn't necessarily go to a lawyer for, but, you know, just general advice for running an organization, as well as some other small things they provide. That was before the expense policy was made, and prior to that, all of our expenses was basically kind of a handshake, this feels right sort of thing. That's why we made the expense policy, to clarify that, to make sure we have a standard procedure to follow. When I was thinking about the dues, I was thinking about when I did that for the Kansas Chamber of Service. I did not remember that in the expenses policy, we actually spell out the payment of dues to other organizations as a novel expense. And under that, all novel expenses require a committee vote versus being able to be authorized by an officer. So when I asked about it in the Slack, I had the consent of 2 other members of the committee, but that is not a full majority. The majority would be 4, so they did not have a full majority to suffice that, and it would have had to be in a recorded, minuted meeting anyways. So that is where that came from. All right. Any other questions concerning the NSSF situation? Oh.
In the future, before we conduct these kinds of affiliations, would it make sense that we perhaps do a poll or something of the membership to ascertain what people's feelings are? Like, I get the impression that there would be a greater feeling like we bought into this or something. Like if we all of a sudden just start affiliating left and right, I think that members might understandably feel like they're being brought into something they didn't consent to. You know what I mean? Like by proxy.
And we are going to make a better effort in the future to try to do opinion polling. The issue is when we get to the distinction between opinion polling and referendum. There are folks that feel that we should have a referendum before we do anything of this nature, which I will just speak honestly as to my thoughts to this, that I am part of a makerspace in Wichita. It has 400 members. It is a Wichita local space. It's not even a national organization. It's just a little small enclosed space. They went for a period of time where they amended their bylaws to require almost everything to go to a member vote, because folks were feeling upset about the leadership doing various things with the space. And what ended up happening was that they had to do an emergency member meeting under Kansas law to try to rewrite the bylaws because they consistently failed to meet quorum after doing that for about 9 months. They got a turnout of 15% or less by the last referendum they tried to do under that old process, and they ended up amending their bylaws to a more compromised position where there's a spelled out, you know, if it's over this monetary amount or such, where, so there is a place for compromise. I feel like as a national organization, the problem is every time we have a referendum, there's a logistic issue with that we have to appoint an electoral committee, we have to send out voter guides, make sure people are aware. That was one shortcoming of this last referendum, was that many folks understandably did not feel like they had a good idea of what was, you know, why we were having this referendum. We as the committee knew why we were having the referendum because we had concerns brought to us by a chapter organizer, a group of chapter members who wanted more democracy in the process, and we felt like it would be a good thing to toss out to the membership. Unfortunately, you know, we included questions on there based upon an opinion poll that we did with the last demographic survey before that, and what ended up happening was that on the opinion poll we got one way on some of those questions, on the referendum we got the other way, because what ended up happening was a lot of folks saw that referendum, and because the committee did not release a statement as to its beliefs prior to it, we kind of had a last minute, well, this many people on the committee are voting this way, this many people on the committee are voting that way. People looked at that ballot and thought it was just, we wanted everything on that ballot to go through, and people voted accordingly. Because many people feel like we're doing an all right job at this point, so they were just essentially consenting to what they felt like we were presenting when we were presenting honest questions to the membership of this is a real structural change to the organization. That can be alleviated with better education efforts in the future, making sure that we actually get voter guides out in a timely manner. That's going to be something we're work to do with the referendum that comes out of this convention, as well as the October elections. But in that consideration, people are going to have had free votes now from the electoral referendum, the convention referendum, and the October referendum in half a year. I do wonder how many times people are going to have the mental energy, as even though, you know, it's not like people are voting every single day, but I'm just disheartened by the fact that we had, based on the analytics of our software, we had 70% open their email, so they got the email in the box and they opened it, and then we had 40-something% click on the link in the email to the ballot, and we had a third actually fill out a ballot and submit it. So we went from 70% of the membership reading their email to only a third of the membership voting in the ballot. And I wonder how, if we do go down the referendum route of, you know, before we affiliate with other organizations or other big level stuff, ensuring that we're going to make sure that it doesn't end up just being decided by a third of the membership or less as time goes by.
I guess my concern is just that when we're dealing with organizations that, you know, potentially have reactionary tendencies or that are adjacent, you know, like, or that they're funding, you know, reactionary politicians, like, I think that that would warrant a special caution. I mean, maybe not, you know, to the level of holding a referendum, but, like, I feel like this is something that we should have floated to the membership, like, to get research, because I feel like we were kind of blindsided, like people were posting, you know, like certain funding for reactionary politicians. I mean, was there like a lot of research done into the political track of this SSF, or?
We did some research into their lobbying efforts, and I mean, at the end of the day, we're looking to continue working with the USCCA for firearms instructors. If you look into the USCCA's funding, it's a little bit different since they organize a little bit differently, so there's less transparency in their process. There's less you can find out. But I can guarantee you the USCCA has given plenty of money to Republican politicians to continue the efforts of what the USCCA wants to do. I
So-
agree we should be cautious and very considerate of going and affiliating with these organizations. At the same time, we don't have the infrastructure to do what some of these organizations have built up. And until we have that infrastructure, we have to be able to make that consideration.
So if I can step in real quick, I think that definitely we need to have better opinion polling going forward with things like this. I think that I would agree that, I was one of the officers that seconded Alex's recommendation to join the NSSF because I feel that it was worthwhile. I think we always need to make the consideration of, we need to make the calculation of how much is our affiliation going to aid these orgs in, passing reactionary policies and having, bad material effects on the working class versus what are we going to get out of it. So in the case of the NSSF, a $200 due to a multi-million-dollar organization isn't going to, materially improve their ability to cause harm. And we felt that we'd be getting a reasonable amount of benefit out of that. However, there's still the symbolic association of, joining a reactionary organization, and that should have been done with greater opinion polling, and it was a mistake on our part not to do that. We should have, done much more of that before taking that step. So I think I would agree with Alex that we shouldn't necessarily put all of those things to a referendum, but there definitely should be much greater discussion and debate before we take those steps. And whether we make that a formal process or not, that would be a place for a member petition possibly, but that's definitely something that we need to improve on in the future. Okay.
Hi, Sarah, they, them from Front Range. So it's sort of putting aside the hypothetical of like how we conduct polling and referendums and such things. Like, so you mentioned that you had been considering, with varying levels of attention, but considering joining the NSSF since January, and I'm not sure if I possibly missed something, but I didn't know until after it had already happened. And the motivations for joining sounds like a lot of, it's a continuous issue, the insurance. So I was just wondering, if I could request some immediate transparency during this convention, like, are there other organizations you're currently looking at affiliating with because of the ongoing insurance problem that we could know about?
We have no other options besides the NSSF for the insurance. That is the only thing we're aware of. The only other affiliation we are actively considering at this time is the USCCA, due to the fact that we intend to run our instructor program through it. That has been thrown to the membership many times now, and we requested an opinion polling after the NSSF situation on the USCCA, given the consideration that the USCCA also donates to Republican politicians, and thus far the opinion polling seems to be positive from what I've seen.
For what it's worth, the current USCCA question was just a question in the Slack. I think it might be worthwhile putting out an email to the membership to confirm that this is the path we want to take. I will say that I think it's the path that we should take because I don't think there's a realistic alternative at this point for getting our membership program off the ground, our instructor program off the ground. But this is the sort of thing that I think we do need to be better on, and we need to, reach out and get active input from the communities, and at the very least the active members of the community in Slack and other communication platforms. We need to, I think that we're trying to navigate the line between having, an effective executive body that can make decisions and get things done for the health of the organization, but we also need to make sure that we're accountable to our members. And we are accountable in that we are elected and we can be recalled, we can be voted out. But that's sort of like the bare minimum, and I think that we do need to do more as a committee and as officers to make sure that we are accountable. So I do think that we should maybe hold a more formal poll and ensure that we get more input from a greater number of our members than just asking in the Slack. I think that people will be okay with the USCCA. For our instructor program, we've been talking about that for a while, and there haven't been many objections. But again, it's the sort of thing that we need to make sure that we are, communicating with our members and that we are getting the consent of our community before moving forward on some of these things.
I was just hoping to add that I know it's easier to criticize leadership from the outside than to lead, but I wanted to express a broad, vague hope that I think this warrants greater discussion about establishing what sort of actions warrant significant input from the membership. I know there's the problem of getting bogged down with bureaucracy and having people who aren't necessarily as informed about things, pushing things one way or the other. But at the same time, I think it's somewhat of a false dichotomy to say it's either we find out after things happen or we bring up every little thing and are constantly voting, and it's only 10% whoever votes. And so I hope that we can sort of establish a threshold of importance and sort of talk about what sort of things that we should always have input on, so that it's not sort of random and discretionary, so that there's more of a community there where people know what's going on. Just wanted to express that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Brian.
And if I may speak in regards to the USCCA for just a moment, I'm going to read verbatim one of the paragraphs in their general FAQ on their stance in regards to LGBT rights. The USCCA believes all individuals, regardless of race, color, religion, age, national origin, ancestry, sex, pregnancy, veteran status, martial status, sexual orientation, gender identity, economic status, political affiliation, and/or any other characteristic protected by state, federal, or local laws, have the rights to effective self-defense. Along with the right to self-defense, the USCCA further believes that it is the responsibility of every armed citizen to maintain a level of training that will ensure any self-defense actions are carried out within the boundaries of applicable laws set forth by our elected representatives. The USCCA further believes that all persons, regardless of race, color, religion, age, national origin, ancestry, sex, pregnancy, veteran status, martial status, sexual orientation, gender identity, economic status, political affiliation, and/or any other characteristic protected by federal, state, or local laws should have the ability to receive the best legal counsel available to them during any investigation into a use of force for self-defense. All responsibly armed citizens should be treated fairly and equally. So, with a lot of the groups out there, they will say one thing and the culture will do something different. With the USCCA, I have found they have been ever so accepting, ever so understanding, ever so helpful in everything that we do. And that's personally why I brought them up as an option in the beginning. And granted, there are very few options in general, but the partnership with them does seem to be a lot more on the basic understanding that self-defense is a human right, not just a right to a certain strata of people. So hopefully, I personally look forward to a very long and continued relationship with the USCCA. So if anybody has any questions or concerns about them, I can't speak on their behalf, but I can definitely tell you from my personal interactions and the interactions as an organization, they have had little to no problem with us whatsoever.
Hey, I'm Chris. He, him from the Triad NC chapter. Sort of, kind of agreeing with both of you. I do sort of share the concern about insufficient opinion polling on the NSSF decision. But I also share the concern of way too much opinion polling burns people out. And I sort of want to say, I think to some extent, expecting the 8 people up on stage today to opinion poll effectively a 2,000 member organization is really difficult, and I think some of that responsibility needs to be on us, like the chapter leaders, the local leaders, to actually get our chapters to engage. So that would sort of require us to, listen in more actively on you guys' meetings, and sort of also require you to say, hey, talk about this with your chapters and see what they think. It's not really a concrete suggestion, just my opinion.
And definitely our central committee meetings are open to all chapter organizers and to some extent to all members, although we've been somewhat limited in that. But definitely we want people to take part, and observe and listen and have comments on our, on our leadership of the organization, and to sit in on those meetings, and we invite people to ask questions. So definitely, I believe we're having a meeting tonight that's open to anyone who's present at the convention. I know some people have other plans that are maybe a bit more entertaining, but if anyone wants to take part in that, you're all welcome to attend. And I agree, we definitely need to build those greater relationships with our chapter organizers to have those communications with people, directly on the ground, rather than simply through our electronic communication. It's just, that's more infrastructure that we need to build, and it's going to take a lot of effort on everyone up here's part, and also on organizers' part. So I think that's a good point.
I'd like to respond to both the last comment and the other comrade about the issue of transparency versus the central committee deciding things, and the issue the issue of trying to poll about every little thing, and the kind of frustrations behind this. And the 2 things I wanted to say is that, one, I don't think anybody up here on the stage had any idea the organization was going to be this big, or that it was going to get to the point that it was up to this point. And a lot of what we've been doing, I feel like over the past year, is trying to keep up. And a lot of the work we've done ahead of this convention is to build the infrastructure to make these things go a little bit smoother, and to have more processes in place, because it was not planned 18 months ago that we would be maintaining this kind of thing. And I agree with everything that both of the comrades said. And I feel like in particular, this incident is one thing where I feel like we could learn and do better. But I feel kind of optimistic about going forward with these kind of issues for a couple of reasons. And one of them is the fact that here shortly, the size of the central committee is going to be expanded, possibly quite a bit greatly. It's been a 6-member central committee for quite some time, and after the petitions and everything, it's going to be an expanded central committee. And I feel, while there's some apprehensiveness about adding more people to the committee, I feel really optimistic about the fact that having more hands on deck, because most people are unpaid volunteers, is going to make it a lot easier for us to interface with these things, and for us to efficiently do these things. Because right ahead of the convention the past few weeks, a lot of us have been really worn thin for 6 people to do this kind of thing. And I'm speaking out of experience, because recently, and you'll hear about this during my report, for Director of Chapter Organizing, I have expanded to include more comrades to be helping me with my job. And even in the past 2 or 3 weeks where this has been official and I've had a group, it's been a huge help to me. And things have been running a lot more efficiently on my end from having more people helping with the chapter organizing. So I actually feel quite optimistic that as the size of the central committee expands and we have more really dedicated comrades up here with this 6 helping us, that things like this is going to be a lot easier for us to keep up with and do, and to include everybody, because there's going to be more hands on deck with it, if that makes sense. But I completely agree with everything that the comrades said in relation to this issue.
And to conclude on that kind of, how this organization goes is ultimately in the hands of the membership, because ultimately the membership is what keeps us funded. There is no SRA if there are no members, and certainly in October there'll be a lot more people to come on board at the national level. And part of the reason why we have chapter delegates is that we are, in a sense, organized in a federalistic structure. Chapters are where things should be happening. I hope to get to the point one day where we don't necessarily even have situations like this, where I feel like national needs to be doing things at national level, but that then chapters will be taking the main day-to-day work. And already chapters do take the main day-to-day work. It's chapters the ones organizing range days, going to events, these sort of things. But I'd like to see in the future a point where people don't say, oh, I'm with the SRA. People say, oh, I'm with Front Range SRA. Oh, I'm with Wichita SRA. SRA does need to be, in my personal opinion, and we'll see how that goes, following elections, following our committee meetings, following everything. But I do feel like I have a vague consensus with the committee that we do feel chapters need to be where the focus is. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, is refocusing our attention to make sure that we are working to grow chapters. I feel like outside of the procedural errors and the political stuff, one of the things that has come out of this discussion of affiliation is that we have focused so much at the national level that we have begun to neglect at the chapter level. That is something I'd like to see us refocus on, so that we are devoting more time and resources to chapters versus getting our time and energy tied up in these sort of situations.
So does that conclude the president's report?
Go for it. Sorry, it kind of turned into a thing. Well, go ahead, Vice President.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So, just moving forward to my report, as the Vice President of the SRA, in the bylaws, my role is defined rather vaguely. I believe it says the Vice President shall be vested with all the powers of the President during the President's absence, and the Vice President's duties are they shall have any other duties as may be determined by either the officers or the Central Committee. So basically, I fill in where we need something done that isn't necessarily fulfilled by another officer role. So the primary role that I've filled, I believe, is a communication role, and in sort of creating the language that defines our movement and, the sort of messaging that we want to put out there about who and what we are. So I've done that in a number of ways since the beginning of the organization. Early on, I was very active in evangelizing the organization online through social media. I've been involved with making sure that our language on the website and in the bylaws and in our other official documents, expresses, our organization's beliefs and our organization's goals. Excuse me, my voice is racked from karaoke. And making sure that, that we are presenting ourselves and defining our role publicly the way, and that we are being seen the way that we want to see, the way that we want to be seen. So aside from, some of the written word things, of course, I'm also the host of the SRA podcast since January. Before that, I was co-host with Alex. So the podcast, I think, has been quite effective, especially as it's become more popular lately, in getting our message out there and, spreading not just like the official line, but really, I'm trying to spread a philosophy of encouraging people to become activists in their community and become activists and organizers within the SRA and other organizations. And I think that we've been fairly successful in getting that message out there and, sort of encouraging people to step up and, take an active role in making the change that they want to see in the world. In addition to my communication roles, I also do a fair amount of internal communication and moderation in the Slack. With the help of Ed, we handle new member invitations, getting people into the Slack, helping people get into their chapters. I've had more difficulty with that lately as we've been growing so quickly and dealing with other matters, but so far I think we've done a good job at helping people who join get connected with who they need to talk to and with passing information. I'm one of the main contact points if someone has a question or if someone has a concern or a problem. They can reach out to me through the Slack or through email or through another means, and then we can make that, put them in touch with the proper person or get, the process started to deal with whatever their problem is. I also forgot to mention, in addition to, as part of my communication role, we've also been involved in, I've also been involved in various media interviews. I was on the BBC briefly in an interesting interview. I've also, been on various podcasts evangelizing the organization, on the Defunct Guillotine podcast with Brett, with, I think we were on Eyes Left and a few others, just getting the word out there about us. Aside from that, the biggest thing that I think I want to work on going forward was I've been sort of the main coordinator for directing fundraising for our disaster relief efforts. Our first effort was for Hurricane Florence. We raised, I believe, $1,300 for that. And OSO, there in the back, along with Brad and Alex, actually carried out the relief operation of delivering supplies to those shelters in South Carolina. Then for Hurricane Michael, I believe we raised $3,500, and again, OSO delivered just a huge quantity of supplies to the Tallahassee People's Center. I forget the exact name, but two activists in DSA and PSL who were able to distribute those goods. And of course, our most recent fundraiser, raising money to be donated to the victims of the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand. By the way, I did get an email a couple days ago confirming, since we donated that money through GoFundMe, since we weren't able to do a direct donation to the mosque, I have received confirmation that that money was dispersed to one of the, either to an organization that is partially run by one of the mosques in question, and that money is going towards, along with most of the other funds that were donated by other organizations, is going to those victims to pay for their medical costs, funeral costs, dealing with the trauma and the healing of everything with that. So moving forward, I think I want to work with OSO and the other members of the committee and other officers to get us prepared for this year's hurricane season, to make sure that we have plans in place. If there is another major hurricane, that we can get into action quickly, that we can fundraise, that we can get supplies, that we can get them delivered to where they need to be and have the relationships with local people on the ground who can distribute them. So I sort of want to take ownership and responsibility of that as much as I can, to try and ensure that we get our hurricane and our other disaster relief operations operating smoothly. That's something that's going to take a great deal of investment and infrastructure building going forward in the coming years. But hopefully we can get, I think that's a really important program to be able to do that mutual aid. So that's something that, again, that I think I want to work on directly. So if anyone has any questions. Okay. Someone half raised a hand, but no, that's okay. Oh,
You may have covered this yesterday. I'm not sure when the podcasters were up there talking, but do y'all have any numbers on like how many people are listening to or downloading the podcast? I was just curious.
Yes, we have statistical information through Simplecast, which is our podcast distribution service. So for the most part, our episodes since the beginning of season 2 mostly draw about 700 to 800 downloads during their first week, and then typically about 1,000 to 1,500 over, the months that they've, over the long term that they're up. However, we have had 2 episodes that have been significantly more popular. Our episode 6, where I interviewed Robert Evans, because of his promotion of that, that resulted in a large uptick in listens. That one was still our most popular episode ever. Additionally, the recently released episode 9 was also very popular, almost as popular as Robert Evans, especially since we brought on our social media director, Cody, who is not present today. I think that their efforts in, doing social media promotion have probably helped with increasing that listenership. Plus, I think a lot of people are starting to realize that the SRA has a podcast. A lot of people seem to discover that every day. So, yeah, it's definitely getting more popular over time. Right. If there are no other questions, then I believe JL is next.
I was just gonna say real quick, would you mind if I jump in and do my report real quick so I can go back to monitoring the stream?
Is that okay with everyone? Ed, get his director report out of the way.
Okay.
Follow procedure.